Hallo iedereen, welkom bij Dutch&Go. Today I'm going to give you 7 tips on how to fast track your Dutch learning experience and how to learn Dutch as quickly as possible. Let's go. So before we begin and I give you my 7 tips that I've carefully compiled for you, I just want to give you this brief disclaimer. Of course, there's no absolute way how to learn Dutch as fast as possible. There's just a bunch of several methods. Some will work better, some won't work as well. It depends a bit, of course, on your own personal background. I would also say the speed with which you can learn Dutch depends very much on which other languages you already speak, previous knowledge of Dutch or contact with the language that you might have had before. Maybe you grew up with it, maybe someone speaks it in your family, maybe you've had some other contact with the language before, but you've never learned it in any systematic kind of way. And then, of course, also this video is for absolute beginners. So I hope that when you're a beginner and you just want to be as quick as possible and get as far as possible, that this video will be helpful for you. Of course, maybe even medium students could also find a couple of tips in here that maybe they've never thought about, or maybe never considered or never thought about like that too. So I hope this will be helpful. Having said all of that, let's go. So tip number 1 would be learn the basic vocabulary that you need to talk about yourself. So really start from you, who you are as a person, what you do, your life, your family, your house, your daily activities. Start with everything revolving around you. See if you can name the things that you have in your house. See if you can name the daily activities, your daily routine that you do every day. See if you can describe your plans, the verbs, the activities that you're going to do over the weekend, etc. Your hobbies, what you do at work, all of that. Everything for beginners should be related to you, me in this case, yourself, your family, your friends, everything around you. Jobs, hobbies, spare time, routine, naming things around the house, naming things about your body, etc. That's the first crucial step. So compile a list and try to learn that vocabulary systematically, as systematic as you possibly can. Where I should also mention having a good study rhythm and studying vocabulary every day for at least 10 or 15 minutes will help tremendously. And I've made previous videos and material about how to study vocabulary efficiently, and there's lots of that as well all over the internet. So please, if you want to learn vocabulary, just keep those study techniques in mind, because I think that will get you very far. Tip number 2. Learn how to spell. Dutch is a very transparent language in terms of the way how you write it and how you pronounce it. If you know how to spell and you know the spelling rules, if you know how to recognize when a word is long, when a word is short, what happens when you conjugate verbs that are long in the infinitive and long in the conjugation, or short in the infinitive and short in the conjugation, when you put short nouns into the plural, long nouns into the plural, short adjectives declenced with an A, or long adjectives declenced with an A, you'll see that they're all part of the very same set of rules. So focus on that first. I've made previous videos about long versus short and how to spell correctly, but if you know how to do that and recognize the spelling and recognize that it's always part of the same pattern, you'll be able to basically independently read and write and say roughly 80% of all of the words in Dutch out loud without any major issues, because there's no weird accent rules, there's not really any weird spelling that you should be aware of. There's some stuff, but that you'll learn along the way. But if you learn and understand how to spell, I promise you that will give you such a great feeling of independency and control, and will just make your life a whole lot easier. Tip number 3. Focus on what's grammatically important. I know, if you're learning Dutch, you might think, oh yeah, de en het, it's so difficult, I need to focus on that. In my opinion, you don't. De and het can be good to know, especially if you're doing an exam, if you need that kind of specific knowledge, then yes. But I would, if I were you, only focus on those grammatical topics that have high impact on understanding other people and you being understood. De and het, unfortunately, doesn't really, or fortunately rather, doesn't really belong in that category. So roughly 80% of the words are with de, the rest is with het, or it could be also 70, 30%, whatever. Most of the times with de, and as you study, as you speak, as you practice, you learn when it's with het. I wouldn't focus on it too much. I know that there's lots of apps, there's more material and tips and tricks on de and het than there is, I think, of any other topic for beginners in the Dutch language. But I don't think that that's actually right. I think that's been over-focused, and there are so many other things that are way more important and way more deserving of your attention than de and het. Okay, but again, I'm not saying that you should know it. I'm just saying you'll learn it as you speak. And if your goal is to take an exam, well, then you can also still separately focus on de and het, getting that right. But also be aware that probably you'll never, ever be able to know all of the words in Dutch that have de and that have het. So, you know, I'm just saying it's kind of an impossible task. So, just for you to know. But rather, instead of focusing on the articles, focus on what is grammatically important. So what is in there? For example, the sentence structure, and then specifically the sentence structure with auxiliary verbs. Getting a grip of the auxiliary verbs, understanding when it's moeten, mogen, kunnen, etc. Super important. Understanding how separable verbs work will make your life a whole lot easier too, and will help you understand how separable verbs can have slightly different meanings in comparison to the non-separable verbs to which they might or might not be related, such as staan, to stand, or opstaan, to get up. And then also, massively important and massively annoying, the past tense. Learn the past tense. It's not fun, it's not easy, it's highly irregular, but the past tense is really, I feel, one of the most important and one of the most difficult things you'll probably learn in the Dutch language. Just because if you get a past tense wrong, whether it's the participium or the imperfect tense, if you get one of these forms wrong, people might really have difficulty understanding you, and you might also find it very difficult to understand other people. So as soon as you get a grip of the basic sentence structure in Dutch, I would go to the past tense as quickly as possible and just practice these highly irregular forms and vowel modulations as quickly as possible, just to make sure that they're fixed in your brain. Tip number 4. Private classes, if you can afford them. Yeah, private classes are expensive. However, they can be highly effective if you have a good private teacher who understands your background, your knowledge of other languages related to Dutch, your weaknesses, your strengths, what needs reviewing, all of that stuff. A teacher can give you highly individual classes that are tailored to your needs, tailored to your own interests, tailored to where you want to take your Dutch, for what you need it, for what you want to use it, what you are personally interested in. For example, in my case, I have a student and he's, like me, a huge movie lover. And so I made a point of teaching him most of the A2 grammar using most of the times movie scenarios, movie genres, etc. I wouldn't do that for everybody, but for him it worked fantastically well because it's one of his main interests. So we get to talk about that at the same time, but we also get to talk about some grammatical topics that were important for him to know too. So that was kind of like a nice 2-in-1 kind of situation. So private classes will definitely, if you can afford them, will definitely help you to learn Dutch as fast as possible, because you'll have the personal complement of of a teacher. You'll have often frequent corrections. You'll have ample speaking time, ample listening time. If you have a good rapport with a private teacher, all of that stuff will be tremendously helpful to make progress in learning Dutch fast. Tip number 5. Practice speaking at home, alone, by yourself, like a crazy person. I've already given this tip in another video previously, but it's really important to just write down a couple of topics, words, vocabulary that you want to include in your topic, in your presentation, in your description. Write down some words and speak spontaneously. Just practice speaking. Don't just practice writing, making your exercises and studying vocabulary. All of that is nice and good, but practice speaking. So that could either result in trying to do exercises, grammatical exercises about sentence structure or verb conjugation orally, or it could also just mean, as I've just described, choosing a topic that you want to discuss, for example, your routine, writing down some words, verbs, nouns related to that, writing those down, and then using the list that you made to speak spontaneously about your routine and just find your own voice, your own natural rhythm in Dutch as you practice speaking. Tip number 6, connect with people, but not too closely. Okay, I know we're in COVID times, social distancing, all of that stuff, it's important. But try to find ways to connect with people. I'm sure now it's getting better, but I guarantee over the next couple of months it's going to become easier to connect with new people as there will be more and more online meetups. Check what is organized. Check if there's anything in terms of Dutch online meetups that you could attend to practice your Dutch. If you know anyone, family members, friends, anyone who can speak Dutch that you could practice with, book some conversation classes via italki for that matter, or find other conversational partners. All of that stuff will make sure that you'll have ample of speaking time, ample of opportunities to practice the things that you're learning in classes, as you do exercises, as you're learning vocabulary, and just put them into practice. Practice makes perfect and practice makes fluent, especially in language education, and it's going to help you learn how to speak Dutch as quickly as possible. Tip number 7, exposure. So once you've gotten a grip of the basics and you know a little bit of basic vocabulary, I would really also focus on getting exposure. By that I mean listening to music. I've compiled a very nice bunch of playlists according to different genres of Dutch music for you. But also just watching things that have a high level of visual correspondency between what you see and what is said. So think about things like cooking shows, documentaries, travel documentaries, anything instructional, sports videos on YouTube, anything where you can follow what is happening visually and understand, use the visual cues that you get in order to just sort of roughly understand what is going on, and at the same time you have someone describing what is going on, as is often the case in travel programs, cooking shows, all of that stuff. And these kind of highly visual type of programs will help to retain your vocabulary knowledge quite a bit too. That's it. These were my 7 tips on how to learn Dutch fast. I hope they were helpful to you. I hope you like them. If you have any other tips that you feel like you want to share with me and your fellow students, there's only one place to do that, and that is comment box below. So leave a comment and let me know what you think, and if you have any other tips that I've left out. I'm sure there's lots of other tips that you could think of, so I'd be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. This was Dutch and Fast. Dag!